Zhang Yi clearly saw this scene from above and his eyes suddenly condensed. If Jinguji Saikiro actually gave up on protecting Mayumi Takeuchi, then there were only two possibilities for his sudden action. Either Mayumi Takeuchi had lost her value of existence, or she had been hidden away and the one on the hill at present wasn't her. So without hesitation, Zhang Yi raised his white owl, aimed at the shrine maiden in a white cotton robe on the hill, and pulled the trigger in his hand. When the bullet was released, Mayumi Takeuchi was instantly shot directly in the head without any interception from either Fengguang Yuanjin from above or Shishimono Satoru from below. Fengguang Yuanjin sneered with a knowing look, his face never showing the slightest worry. Instead, he released a large number of calamity firecrows that instantly swarmed over the sky and headed in Zhang Yi's direction. Zhang Yi opened his dimensional double doors and left that particular area. After the witch was shot, a layer of white smoke rose with a soft puff, and then a talisman made of white paper slowly fell to the ground. Jinguji Saikiro certainly would not let Zhang Yi lead him by the nose. So during the time when Zhang Yi was fighting with Fengguang Yuanjin, he used a talisman to make a dummy of Mayumi Takeuchi. At present, the real Mayumi Takeuchi had definitely been transferred to a safe place by him. Where is she? After using his space shuttle to avoid the attack of the firecrows, Zhang Yi flew over the battlefield below, his eyes desperately wandering around like a hunting hawk. But there were too many people, too many corpses. And although the ground was covered with these numerous corpses and people, spanning over a vast range, Zhang Yi took comfort knowing full well that Mayumi Takeuchi wasn't just still on the battlefield, but also very close nearby as well. Otherwise, her blood endowment ability would not still be in effect, or certainly wouldn't be blessed to Fengguang Yuanjin. Obviously, Zhang Yi doesn't have the ability to see through everything, and he currently can't quickly find the hiding place of Mayumi Takeuchi. However, once this constraint is lost, Fengguang Yuanjin and Jinguji Saikiro will be finished, so they needed to make the most of the advantage they currently have. Once either of the three enters the battlefield below, it will have a huge impact on the entire battle situation. Hence why Jinguji Saikiro took action immediately. Fengguang Yuanjin knew that he couldn't kill Zhang Yi in a short time, so he also followed suit. He chose to kill the members of the Tengu squad first, specifically Yang Xinshin. He wanted to see what Zhang Yi would do when he unalive his woman. Would he lose control of his emotions, thereby affecting his decisions on the battlefield? Fengguang Yuanjin grinned like a crazed maniac and jumped directly from the golden bird. His target was very clear. It was Yang Xinshin riding on Flower. He dived headfirst, completely in freefall like a cannonball. At this moment, Zhang Yi was ushered in the biggest crisis since this battle. Even if he can protect Yang Xinshin in this out-of-control situation, the entire Tengu team will all die in battle. But at this time, he was actually grinning from ear to ear. The corners of his mouth raised a big arc, and his little brilliant expression was even contagious. He thanked the idiot for helping him with the multiple-choice questions. Originally, he was still hesitating whether to use that risky plan he thought of earlier. But now that he has no choice, his only choice had become the best choice. Fengguang Yuanjin's eyes were full of madness. He wanted to destroy Zhang Yi's faith with his own hands and kill the important people around him. Seeing a person collapse in despair was what Fengguang Yuanjin likes and enjoys the most. In that very moment below, Flower noticed Fengguang Yuanjin falling from the sky with his countless calamity firecrows and was scared shitless. The sky, full of calamity firecrows, burn with an ominous wails, creating a scene like a divine punishment from the heavens. An impact would definitely burn the entire area to ashes. This kind of scene, even with its speed, Flower couldn't avoid it in time. Her hair stood up as she meows in horror. Fortunately, in the next moment, a familiar scent appeared on top of her. Flower's eyes suddenly became clear, and a look of relief appeared on her face the moment she heard Zhang Yi's voice. "It's okay, Flower." Zhang Yi had used his space shuttle to appear at the scene, ahead of Fengguang Yuanjin's flaming descent. He raised his right hand and activated his dimensional gate. Zhang Yi only used this ability for defensive purposes due to its one-way pass. Its disadvantage was that it was fixed in position and can only defend against attacks from one side, which was not conducive to close combat. The advantage is that it covers a large area and its defense is also at the top level. Anyway, in front of Flower, a dimensional gate covering an area of 500 meters in radius suddenly appeared. Fengguang Yuanjin felt a sense of crisis, but he fell too fast. In the intel he received, there was no mention of this ability. So he didn't dare to imagine that Zhang Yi would really use his alternate space to trap him. Because once he did that, he would not be able to use the absolute defense of his two-realm absolute, which would reduce his own safety factor. Fengguang Yuanjin and his firecrows directly sank into the different dimensional space effortlessly. Zhang Yi instantly closed the door to the dimensional space. "Big brother, you won," Yang Xinshin stated excitedly, but Zhang Yi clenched his fist and replied that he hasn't. "Not yet, at least. I only managed to just seal him temporarily. He will break the seal sooner or later." Zhang Yi quickly surveys the several other battle lines, then back to Jinguji Saikairo on the battlefield in front of him. Now it's a race against time. Zhang Yi had temporarily sealed Fengguang Jin at the cost of temporarily sacrificing his spacetime ability. However, Fengguang Jin cannot be killed, even in the dimensional space. And with his ability of Phoenix Flames, he will sooner or later break through the seal of space. At that time, Zhang Yi will be completely unable to use the ability of his alternate space in a short time. But now, at least now, he is the only captain-level mutant on the entire battlefield. It is difficult for Zhang Yi to kill Fengguang Jin, but it is much easier for him to kill the lower-level mutants. The first target he targeted was naturally the second-in-command of the Eclipse Moon organization, Jinguji Saikairo. At this time, Jinguji Saikairo was about to raid the members of the Tengu squad with his Shikigami. But the next moment, he felt a terrible murderous intent shrouding him. Jinguji Saikairo looked up in horror and saw Zhang Yi staring at him. Zhang Yi's right hand, a ball of unstable dark matter, was slowly condensing. Jinguji Saikairo's pupils shrank. He knew too well how terrible the power of that move was. Even Canute, with his extremely high defense, was severely injured. If his physical body took this move, he would definitely die. "I need to get the hell out of here." Jinguji Saikairo summoned the golden bird without hesitation, then jumped on its back and began to fly away. However, Zhang Yi certainly couldn't let him go. The void spear condensed into shape in his palm, and at the same time, his eyes locked onto the position of Jinguji Saikairo, who had bolted like lightning on his golden bird. Zhang Yi held the void spear high in the air, aimed at the direction of Jinguji Saikairo with his 20-fold speed blessing and precise shooting activated, and threw it hard. The attack was like a meteor speeding through the air, and no matter how fast the golden bird was, it couldn't be faster than the void spear. The void spear was not a single target attack skill, but a large-scale area of effect damage skill. This attack instantly covered a spherical area with a radius of 500 meters, which also covered the range of Jinguji Saikairo's escape. He noticed the attacking gradually closing in, and the danger of death enveloped him completely. Jinguji Saikairo hurriedly summoned all the Shikigami to block in front of him, and at the same time deployed a protective barrier. But in front of this move of the Spear of the Void, the Shikigami and barrier he was proud of were shattered. They were not on the same level, and the gap was too obvious. In a flash, all his defenses disappeared, and his body was decomposed into withered fragments by the power of the void, and his flesh and blood exploded. Zhang Yi took out the supernatural food to replenish his lost supernatural energy. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It was a pity that the essence of such a powerful supernatural being could not be collected. But now he didn't have much time left. He had to sweep the entire battlefield before Fengguang Jin broke through his space seal. Just then, Wu Di suddenly noticed something strange, pointed towards it, alerted and questioned everyone with a look of absolute disbelief. What the hell is going on? The rest turned and was surprised to see that a strange change had occurred in Canute in the distance. The giant blue shark was actually crawling at Yang Xinshin's feet. With a humble attitude, especially in his eyes, there was a look of extreme admiration. Zhang Yi suddenly smiled at the corner of his mouth. He knew that Yang Xinshin's ability, Angel of Desire, specifically her red arrow of love, had worked. After Canute was subdued, Zhang Yi did not dare to relax for a moment. Now he had to quickly deal with all the external opponents so that the members of the Tengu team can be free to help him deal with Fengguang Jin when the time comes. Because once the infection reaches a certain limit, Zhang Yi's alternate space will collapse. And after the collapse, he will not be able to open his dimensional space again within 24 hours. His attention shifted to the battle between Bailey Chongqing and Dagonghui Yanjin. Although the sumo wrestler was beaten very badly, he still hadn't suffered any fatal injuries. Even after being scratched several times by Bailey Chongqing's weapon, only a few layers of greasy fat had appeared on his body. If the fight continued like this, even if Bailey Chongqing could win this battle, his life might be in danger due to severe physical exhaustion. Zhang Yi took out his large anti-material sniper rifle from his alternate space and locked onto Dagonghui Yanjin several kilometers away. Dagonghui Yanjin was already barely holding on when a loud bang sounded. Then, the silver bullet wrapped in an extremely powerful force was shot out in an instant, covering the separated distance of several kilometers. Dagonghui Yanjin's face turned pale in an instant, followed by a heart-wrenching howl. This sound was heard clearly by everyone even several kilometers away. Most of them curiously wondered, They didn't know what happened that could have made the powerful neon Yokozuna scream so miserably. Only the people at the scene understood what had happened. Bailey Chongqing looked at the bloody lower body of the great craftsman Dagongui Yanjin and couldn't help but be stunned. At the same time, he subconsciously covered his lower body with one hand. This kind of pain any man can deeply understand. Zhang Yi lowered his rifle and stated coldly, "No matter how strong your defense is, that part of the body can't be trained enough, right?" At this time, there was only one thought in Dagongui Yanjin's mind. That is, he must escape. Otherwise, he would definitely die. However, Bailey Chongqing would not let such a good opportunity go to waste. Although he was stunned for a moment, he quickly gave chase. He made a massive leap in the air with his huge halberd blade, and then chopped down with the force of thunder. Accompanied by a loud puff, the huge halberd chopped on Dagongui Yanjin's fat neck, and it sank deeply into it, instead of beheading him directly. A large ball of white grease mixed with blood overflowed. Even though the battle maniac was chopped on the neck, he did not die instantly, but desperately clamped the halberd blade with his muscles, and then pushed the Fang Tian away and continued to run for his life. Frowning, Zhang Yi quickly and decisively changed the bullet, and then took aim for the second time. He didn't have the luxury and was a bit annoyed about how difficult eliminating Dagongui Yanjin was turning out to be. It was really hard to kill a mutant who mainly focuses on cultivating the body, because after cultivating to a higher level, they tend to have amazing defense and become extremely difficult to kill. With a loud bang, the shot was aimed at Dagongui Yanjin's knee. A big hole was directly blasted in his knee, and he fell to the ground in embarrassment. Bailey Chongqing chased after him, like a tenacious pig butcher, chasing after a dying pig. "Go to hell, you Ronin freak!" He jumped up, holding the halberd in both hands, and stabbed it hard into the back of Dagongui Yanjin. As the halberd pierced into the body of Dagongui Yanjin fiercely, he still struggled to break free. On the verge of death, adrenaline kicked in and Dagongui Yanjin almost knocked Bailey Chongqing to the ground. Bailey Chongqing was a little anxious at this time. This fat guy, why is he so hard to kill? Zhang Yi told Bailey Chongqing to be quick and decisive. He couldn't trap Fengguangyu Wenjin for too long. He had already felt his alternate space gradually collapsing. Just then, Bailey Chongqing had a brutal and malicious yet efficient idea. Thus, no matter how strong Dagongui Yanjin was, his intestines were soft. So, holding the Fang Tianhuaji tightly with both hands, Bailey Chongqing stabbed into the holes in his body again and again. The human body has 7 orifices, and all of them were stabbed to pieces. Dagongui Yanjin's legs were broken and his body was covered with scars, but he relied on his tenacious will to support himself with his hands and tried to crawl away. "Team leader, where are you? Why don't you come to help me?" he roared desperately. The Fang Tian sank deeply into Dagongui Yanjin's body from the outside to the inside, and even the halberd head could no longer be seen, and the halberd shaft was sunk more than half a meter long. Bailey Chongqing used all his strength this time and picked him up like a skewer. Dagongui Yanjin let out a shrill scream, and he struggled hard in the air over and over again, unwilling and desperate. His vitality was particularly strong. Even after being pierced like this, he still did not die. After being tortured hundreds of times, Dagongui Yanjin finally lost his breath. Bailey Chongqing panted and thought, Zhang Yi's routine is really useful. He thrust the Fang Tianhuaji into the ground. Dagongui Yanjin's body hung on it like a dead dog, and blood flowed down the flagpole, soaking a large area of snow. On the other side, Yang Xinxin thought about Zhang Yi's words in her mind. She realized that although the battle situation was in their favor, it was not completely in their favor. Once Fengguangyu Wenjin escaped, they would have to fight a captain-level figure without Zhang Yi's ability in the dimensional space. We have to find that witch quickly. She knew very well that a large part of Fengguangyu Wenjin's strength came from the witch's power. Meng Xiu rushed over, and using her reconnaissance ability, aerial detection, she immediately took charge in finding Mayumi Takeuchi. With her as the center, all movements within a 3-kilometer radius were clearly detected by her. Soon she found the place where Mayumi Takeuchi was hiding. The witch and another member of the Eclipse group are hiding behind the container area at Morning Dew Harbor. She pointed to a section of the container area in the distance. They're hiding over there. Yi and Shui Miao volunteered to capture Mayumi Takeuchi. As assassins, they were naturally the best option in dealing with such situations. As one of the very few with a decent attack power besides Liang Yu and Bailey Chongqing, Wu Di wanted to join but was told to rest. His strength would be needed elsewhere later on. Soon, the two hurried off, and as they did, Yang Xinxin grew more agitated. She didn't know how much longer Zhang Yi's dimensional space can last. Anyway, speaking of Zhang Yi, he turned his gaze to the last battlefield on the secluded spot not far from him, and again, took out his anti-material sniper rifle. He subconsciously took aim but hesitated for a moment and did not shoot. This was a duel between warriors. Zhang Yi did not have the so-called noble sentiment, so he naturally did not care about fairness or unfairness. But for Liang Yu, she cared a lot. If Zhang Yi shot Tsukamoto Nobunaga in the back, it would indeed create an excellent opportunity for her. But for Liang Yu, that might form a demon in her heart and hit the dignity of the warrior in her. However, at present, Zhang Yi could not miss the opportunity. So after a moment, the corners of his mouth rose slightly, and he thought of a great idea. He did not shoot, but activated the ability of his precision shooting and locked onto the back of Tsukamoto Nobunaga's head. How does it feel to have a master watching you from behind? Being locked onto by a captain-level figure is enough to make anyone feel uneasy. Moreover, a powerful warrior like Tsukamoto Nobunaga has a sharper intuition. So he noticed the moment the gun was pointed at the back of his head. No one can stay calm at this time, and his momentary distraction was also caught by Liang Yu in an instant. When martial arts masters fight, any mistake will determine victory or defeat, or life or death. Tsukamoto Nobunaga's heart was in turmoil, and even though he swung his sword to block Liang Yu's sword, the sword's momentum was not as confident and powerful as before. Liang Yu took the opportunity to exert force. Holding her dragon's roar with both hands, she slashed at Tsukamoto Nobunaga fiercely. Tsukamoto Nobunaga's sword actually shattered under Liang Yu's sword. Her dragon's roar cut from his left shoulder to his right abdomen with a soft puff, and blood spurted out from his strong body. Tsukamoto Nobunaga looked at the splattered blood in disbelief. He even heard the sound of blood splashing, like the wind in his hometown. He slowly knelt on the ground, looking down at the broken sword which Tsukamoto Nobunaga was proud of. Then back at him, who had a shocked expression itched on his face, Liang Yu stated coldly, "The craftsmanship of the so-called famous swords of ancient times has long been outdated. How can a person who is immersed in history and hesitates to move forward, forgetting to look up at the way ahead, be called a master?" Liang Yu passed by him and cut off his head with a backhand. She then took Tsukamoto Nobunaga's decapitated head to Zhang Yi to show she kept her promise, and won accordingly. Everyone gathered, and before they could believe that their victory was certain, Zhang Yi stated coldly, "The real fierce battle has just begun. I can't suppress Fengguangyu and Jin anymore, so you guys better be prepared." After Liang Yu and Bailey Chongqing arrived at the scene, Zhang Yi opened his alternate space without hesitation, and then released Fengguangyu and Jin, who had been imprisoned for a few minutes. He then used his space shuttle to leave the battlefield in an instant. His dimensional space was on the verge of collapse, so instead of waiting for Fengguangyu and Jin to completely destroy his alternate space, it would be better to release him in advance. As for the next battle, Zhang Yi decided to leave it to the others. He knew very well that the first person Fengguangyu and Jin wanted to kill was him, so he had to run far away. Fengguangyu and Jin appeared in the siege of the Tengu team members. He slowly got up, but at this time, his eyes were full of confusion. The speed of time in the dimensional space was completely different from reality. Although from the outside world, he was trapped in it for only a few minutes. But in that dimension, he had experienced a time stagnation for decades. He was in such a world where his body could hardly move, but his nerves and thinking were still normal. It was an unimaginable torture, the cruelest mental prison in the world. For decades, there was only a white space in front of him. And in those past few decades there, Fengguangyu and Jin has forgotten many things. But his willpower had always been extraordinary. After all, he adapted to the Phoenix Flames, which made him experience thousands of deaths due to his willpower. And as of then, his will has long been tempered into steel. Where am I? Haven't I been in a white dimensional space for a long time? Where is this place? The moment Fengguangyu and Jin saw Zhang Yi's figure in a distance, his consciousness gradually returned to the present, which was decades ago for him. He forgot a lot, but he didn't forget what he was going to do. Soon, the confusion in his eyes gradually dissipated. Wait, I am Fengguangyu and Jin, the leader of Eclipse Moon. I took over the central plains of Huashu country and obtained fertile land for the landing faction to survive in the end of the world. I want to kill a man named Zhang Yi. Bailey Chongqing roared and rushed forward, ordering for everyone to engage and kill Fengguangyu and Jin. Liang Yu followed closely with a long sword in her hand. Beside Yang Xinxin, Canute charged forward with eyes full of admiration for her after she commanded him to kill Fengguangyu and Jin. Wu Di joined the fray to provide long-range support, although the power he could exert was limited. Anyway, at this time, Zhang Yi was leaning against the back of an abandoned container and was casually taking a drag from a lit cigarette. In the next battle, his ability was limited and he could no longer fight Fengguangyu and Jin on the front battlefield. Beside him were 4 others with a familiar posture. Xiao Honglian, Xing Tian, Uncle Yu and Chunlei. The rest of the miscellaneous pirates had been wiped out by them, and they even managed to eliminate a member of the Eclipse team, the heavy gunner, Kurosawa Akira. Xiao Honglian looked in Zhang Yi's direction, stretched out her hand, and requested for a cigarette. Zhang Yi threw one over and the two took a drag leisurely. Now that you have left the battlefield, can they handle it? Xiao Honglian asked with a wisp of white smoke coming out of her bright red lips. Hearing this, Zhang Yi replied lightly, Fengguangyuan Jin consumed a huge amount of energy to escape from my alternate space. So in just over 10 minutes, he should have experienced countless deaths. And every death would consume his energy. Even though he almost collapsed my alternate space, he was no longer in his peak state. It shouldn't be a big problem for Bailey Chongqing and the others to join forces to deal with him. But the moment Zhang Yi finished speaking, a deafening bang sounded behind them. Then the huge figure of Canute appeared above their heads. He roared loudly the moment he crashed into the massive stack containers the group was leaning against. The huge blue shark then came crushing down in front of the group, forming a terrifying deep pit on the ground of ice and snow.